my slides. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. And we're going to spend about 20 minutes together. And we will be spending that time together in the Metaverse, I'm sure in due course, possibly within 5 years. We will have our avatars, and we'll all be occupying a digital space. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let me just give you some building blocks. I'm here to talk about the blockchain, NFTs, Bitcoin, Metaverse, quite a lot to cover. So let me start where it started. Next slide, Natasha. It started in 2008, 31st of August 2008, with the publication of a 9-page white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto. And it's a very straightforward read. And in this paper, Satoshi, which is a pseudonym, we still don't know who he or she is, basically invented blockchain and invented Bitcoin as the first cryptocurrency to live in the blockchain environment. And the first sentence of this white paper, I always like to go to the original source, really tells you what it's trying to do. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. So blockchain and Bitcoin, which is the currency which sits on top of it, is a way to transfer cash, point in time other things, directly from me to you without a bank getting in the way. And that's basically what the blockchain stands for. The way you do that is that you have to have the transaction validated. And to get any transaction validated, you use a very large network of computers to work through a puzzle to authenticate that transaction. Once that is done, then that identifying code or hash is a proof of work, and that is a block which adds onto other blocks on the blockchain. That's why it's called a blockchain. That's an entirely public record in the sense of any transaction is visible, but it's like the stock exchange. The transaction is visible, but you have no idea who has transacted. So in that sense, it is completely secret. So the blockchain was invented in 2008 at a time when the price of a Bitcoin was 5 cents, $0.05. Next slide. And the next slide kind of tells you how it works. And this maybe the slides are available for you later. It's pretty much what I've just said in the sense of these blocks forming a chain and a blockchain. And of course, to solve these computing problems, which create a transaction and validate it on the system. And once it's validated on the system, by the way, it's an indelible proof. So the intermediary is removed, and it is a record of transaction between two willing parties. If you take the next slide. Now, when these proofs of work or transaction authentications first happened, you could do it on your personal computer at home. And you could earn Bitcoins by doing that. The difficulty of each transaction in that world was a factor of 1. And today that equivalent factor is 16 trillion. So the computing power you need to solve these transaction authentications is colossal. So today's computers, which live in Bitcoin mines, are around 100 billion times more powerful than the computer you're staring at right now. And Bitcoin has the advantage of scarcity. The number of Bitcoins you receive for solving these problems halves every 4 years. And there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in circulation. By the way, each Bitcoin is split into 100 million Satoshis after the founder to make transactions a little easier. Go to the next slide. So that's Bitcoin, and these Bitcoin farms mine Bitcoin. Go to the next slide. Fast forward from 2008, a number of cryptocurrencies were launched. Namecoin was the second one, then Litecoin, and then Ripple, Peercoin, and then Ethereum. And today, of course, there are well over 10,000 cryptocurrencies. The most interesting one, to my mind, is the last one. And I'll talk about that next when we come into what are the implications of cryptocurrencies to the rest of the world and the implications of blockchain. Ethereum. The thing you need to remember about cryptocurrencies is that they are a currency and they are a platform. Okay, the platform you can think about in terms of a blockchain, which generates transactions between willing parties. And Ethereum has built into it what we call an if-then function, which defines any kind of transactional contract, or what we call a smart contract. So if I pay you £10 or 10 rand, you will give me that piece of merchandise or that smoothie. If I give you this, then you will do that. And that smart contract technology is embedded into the Ethereum platform and Ether as the cryptocurrency which is attached to it. And if you go to the next slide, if you think about the implications of cryptocurrency and those transactional platforms, you can think about any transaction of any kind, anywhere in the world, can live on this blockchain. So on this chart, you can see, okay, ownership, bottom right. The ownership of a house or a car can live on the blockchain. Your voting can live on the blockchain. If I vote this way, then I will register a vote for XYZ. Crowdfunding, smart contracts, so debt provision and equity provision. And where this all lands, to give you an idea of the breadth of this application, and by the way, before I move on, the cryptocurrency and the platform which underpin all of these smart contracts, pretty much 90% right now, is Ethereum. So that is the facilitating cryptocurrency which makes this world possible. And the way this is going to change everyone's world is the next slide, which is what we call tokenization. Okay. So what the blockchain allows you to do is provide fractional ownership of any asset you can think of, a digital asset, which we'll come back to, or a real asset. So down the left-hand side, art pieces, antiques, land, technology, gold, etc. So any asset you can think of, be it a property, be it you will get to own one millionth of Arsenal Football Club, or 1/2 millionth of Ferrari F1 team, or 1/1 millionth of a renewables project in Australia. So this tokenization makes fractional ownership possible for everyone. At Old Mutual, we can spend 30 million rand or $30 million on a large infrastructure project. That infrastructure project will be available to each one of us through this tokenization, which is what the blockchain makes possible. Because it makes if-then contracts, smart contracts, available at scale to many, many millions of people. So if you think about the stock market as one other example, right now you buy a share in Apple. In a tokenization world, you would buy one trillionth of Apple, and it would live on your blockchain. So forget stock exchanges, it would live in your tokenization account. So we're working on this right now at Old Mutual in terms of how we can tokenize our real asset portfolio and democratize it effectively for all clients. The second one, which is going to change everything, is related to this, which is the next slide, which is NFTs. So to make again, make the definition very clear, I'll come back to this painting in a second. NFTs are non-fungible tokens. If something is fungible, it can be replicated easily. Like a dollar bill is fungible, or a rand note is fungible. One looks exactly like the other. So we can trade them around quite happily. Non-fungible means they are entirely unique as an asset. So a non-fungible token gives uniqueness to a digital asset. And this, again, this lives on Ethereum. And NFTs, in terms of ownership, allow people to live in a digital world like the metaverse and own a house, or own a cap, or a piece of clothing. It becomes theirs. That ability to own things in the digital world through NFTs, through blockchain technology on Ethereum, is what's transforming the world and where the metaverse comes from. This digital painting, by the way, this is where it all kicked off. It was about a year ago, if I remember correctly. Oh, 11th of March, forgive me, 11th of March last year. I can see it here. So over a year ago. It came completely out of the blue. And I subsequently watched the auction of this piece of artwork. This is an artwork called Every Days, the first 5,000 days. And it is the first 5,000 digital pieces of art as published by a chap called Mark Winkelmann, or Beeple, as he's known. And so these 5,000 images were collated into one NFT, and a chap by the name of Meta Coven, who's from Singapore, paid $69 million for it. If you want to amuse yourself for 5 minutes, watch the home video camera of Mark Winkelmann, Beeple, and watching this auction happen, and watching his bank account reach $69 million right at the end, within the last, it went from 5 million to 69 million in the last kind of 60 seconds of trading. It was really quite an extraordinary thing to see. Mark Winkelmann is about 50 years old, by the way. He's quite a normal guy, definitely not a Beeple, but he's now extraordinarily rich. And what these NFTs allow, as I just mentioned, is a digital world to exist. So we suddenly went very quickly from NFTs to the metaverse. If you take the next slide. So meta is Latin for beyond, and verse is short for universe. So beyond the universe is the metaverse. This is a screenshot I took of a video. Sorry, that's my watch talking to me. And this is a chap wandering around a art gallery in the metaverse. He's looking out over a lake, and he's viewing artworks. So, for example, Every Day's first 5,000 days is on display in the metaverse. You pay, I think it's $1 or $5 to go and see it in the digital metaverse gallery. And the metaverse was first mooted, as most people know by now, by a chap called Neil Stephenson and his science fiction novel of 1992. Remarkably, that's 30 years ago now, called Snow Crash, where he coined the term metaverse and described it as a world, a digital world, which we will inhabit through our avatars. So we will choose our avatar, we will choose what our avatar looks like, we will dress it, we'll have a house to live in, we will meet other people, we'll look at their artworks, we'll go around in their cars, and it's going to be a parallel universe. Sorry, not a universe, a parallel world which sits alongside the physical world. So I kind of think about it, next slide, I kind of think about it as kind of an 8-8-8 world. So ultimately we'll spend 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours in the physical world, and 8 hours in the digital world, i.e. the metaverse. And we'll do that because we want to sit around with friends and chat. We'll do it because we want to visit their homes. We'll do it because we want to travel and go and see the pyramids of Egypt and see how the pharaohs lived in a virtual tour in the metaverse, which includes the Egyptian artifacts, for example. So this is one of the first metaverses, Decentraland. And this is one of the slightly more sophisticated ones. And it's a place where people like Snoop Dogg have bought real estate. You get the next slide. So you can buy real estate in Decentraland. It is of limited quantity. I have bought a little bit of real estate in Decentraland, just in case I'm right on all this. And with Facebook alone investing $10 billion a year and 20,000 programmers, this metaverse is going to become a thing, in my opinion, in due course. By the way, I think Carl Peters was quite right in terms of price action becoming divorced from reality in this world. And I am also reminded of the 1990,000 crash, tech crash, where tech prices came down, but the work went on and the winners emerged. So I do know from my contact there's an enormous amount of work going into NFTs in the metaverse and blockchain as the underpin to all this. So the work is happening and the metaverse is coming our way, and we will buy real estate in the metaverse. Next slide. This was a slightly startling one. This is a digital home on Mars. Mars 4 is a metaverse which replicates the Mars planet, and real estate is for sale there, and a digital home there was sold about a year ago for £500,000. So that's 5 million, that's 10 million rand for that digital home. So that price is probably cheaper today, given the price collapse, but even so, these things are happening. And then a couple of other examples in the metaverse. Just the next slide. We will go to, and our kids do go to concerts. This is a metaverse concert. And the artists who play at these metaverse concerts play to, in some cases, 20 million people who attend. and they each pay $1 or $5, and the artist makes $40 million for one night's entertainment. So the ability to entertain and to at scale in the metaverse is really quite extraordinary and is happening now. So Ariana Grande played in the metaverse a few months ago and booked a $20 million revenue night. And we will be in the metaverse and listen, and we'll turn up as our avatars, and we will want to look cool, or our kids will, and all those good things. Talking about kids, one of the biggest metaverses is the Roblox, which is the next slide. And the Roblox metaverse, this is for kids. I've got a number of friends who have kids who, when they come home from school, they get an allowance in Roblox cryptocurrency. They don their glasses and they head to the Roblox metaverse to meet with their friends, to chat, to hang out, to go shopping for virtual goods. It's worth saying that Nike, when we talk about virtual goods, Nike, the clothing company, has predicted that by 2025, 40% of their revenue will come from virtual goods. That is really quite extraordinary. So these kids hang out in the same way they would usually go to the park. They head to the Roblox and they hang out together. So this is a real thing that is happening. Penultimate example would be the next slide. The Australian Open tennis tournament. This is the metaverse version of it. If you look very closely, that is a digital version of the Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne. I think it's Melbourne or Sydney. And you could hang out there as your avatar and look at the tennis on a real-time basis as it was being played. And what they did, which was very clever, if you look at the next thing, they did an auction of NFTs for spots on the championship court. And if your particular spot on the championship court was the one where the winning shot landed, then that's more valuable. So the person who bought the spot on the court where Rafael Nadal's winning shot hit, Grand Slam winning shot, he made 4,000% on his initial stake. And I think it sold for about $10,000 or $20,000 from memory, as the NFT of that part of the court. So coming slightly closer to home, and then I'll finish with some conclusions. The next page, which makes it a little bit more real. This is the Facebook Horizon Workroom. So these are the avatars where we will sit as work colleagues and work through things together. They're struggling with legs at the moment for some reason. That seems to be very difficult to do for avatars. So you kind of float around. But these are people who have donned their glasses and are gesturing and doing everything, and the avatars do the same thing, and they're talking to each other. And it's just a little bit of a small leap from what we're doing now, which is talking to a screen. We're kind of getting into the screen. So this to me is not too far away and not too much of a stretch of the imagination to get there. So the message is, and then I'll conclude, is blockchain will create a very different future, be it tokenization or NFTs. And we can drop the slides if you want to see my face. Blockchain will create a very different future. It is real, it is happening. Cryptocurrencies, even though they've kind of halved again in value, are real and are facilitating this world. And NFTs are enabling the extraordinary world, which is the metaverse, which will be an additional layer of GDP, which will sit on top of the physical layer of GDP. So let me finish by sharing a couple of conclusions. Again, I think Carl Peter was right. The metaverse will take over from the internet. As the internet 3.0, we will go there to find things out and source information and share information. Number two, we'll inhabit more digital spaces in the metaverse, like that Facebook Horizon Workroom, for example. The world will flatten out as the metaverse becomes more prevalent. So it doesn't matter where you're sitting, be it Joburg or Auckland or Delhi. We'll all inhabit the same world. Hence, equal opportunities for all, which is huge for the developing markets. The cryptocurrency which underpins this whole thing is Ethereum. That's where 90% of the work goes in terms of these smart contracts which enable all these NFTs and gaming and the metaverse. Tokenization will transform ownership both of digital assets and of real assets. So that's going to change our investing world fundamentally. Penultimately, cryptocurrencies, in terms of valuing them, in my opinion, they're not a currency. They're not an asset class. They are a commodity. And the more you need, it's the same as the more you need more lithium to make lithium batteries. That lithium is the commodity which allows a battery to work. Ethereum is the commodity which allows an NFT to work. And the more NFTs you need, the more Ethereum you need, and therefore the value of Ethereum goes up. So it's a commodity supply-demand situation. And then finally, the metaverse, in my opinion, will transform the working lives of our children and our children's children for sure. There'll be designers in the metaverse, there'll be brand designers, there'll be architects, there'll be interior designers, they'll work in casinos, they'll work in bars, there'll be legal experts in the metaverse. You name it, that's what you think about the physical world and digitize it. That's what the metaverse will be. And it'll come along much quicker even than we expect, certainly within the next 5 years. Well, Peter, Stephen, that's me done. I hope that was helpful. It was a bit of a quick run through, and very happy to take any questions.
Hal, yes, thank you. Thanks for that very interesting presentation. We've had a couple of questions come through. Conscious for time, so I'll try and combine them into kind of one larger question, and then we might send you some follow-up questions after today's presentation, which we can then share with our audience later. Just the first one around, I guess, Bitcoin and Ethereum specifically, because those are the two biggest, I guess, cryptocurrencies, if you like, and the most talked about, most prominent. As you say, Ethereum basically serves as on which you can develop all these smart contracts and on which essentially a lot of these applications can be built. Whereas Bitcoin seems to kind of have less of, it seems to be more of a store of value, and it's regarded as, that kind of digital gold. So how do you see those two working in relationship going forward? Do you see one becoming more valuable than the other? Or do you think kind of they both have their place?
Yeah, my view has always been that Ethereum will become more valuable than Bitcoin because its use case is that much more, and as a commodity, it'll be used more. Bitcoin, people I think will probably use it as a store of value. And as we see inflation become more prevalent, fiat currencies are becoming less and less attractive. So that store of value for Bitcoin, I think is a thing and will come back to be a thing. But in terms of, Ethereum is capitalized probably these days about $300 billion, and Bitcoin's just above $1 trillion. Maybe below that today, actually, maybe about 800 billion. But Ethereum will become bigger than Bitcoin, in my opinion, just because the use case is so much more. And if you believe in digitization of the world, the metaverse, NFTs, all the things I've talked about, then Ethereum's the bedrock. And the more that expands, the more Ethereum you need.
Okay. And then, in terms of the metaverse, I guess itself, Facebook is obviously trying to take the lead in that place, clearly emphasized by their changing their name to Meta last year. But there seems, among the big kind of tech corporations, there seems to be this fight around who's going to control that ultimate metaverse kind of operating system or operating environment, when in an ideal world, I guess we want it to be a decentralized system that isn't kind of controlled by one big massive institution, because that kind of defeats the object. So how do you sort of see all of that play out, and what kind of technologies do we still need to see develop to make the metaverse become a more kind of day-to-day thing in our lives, in terms of real-world application?
Yeah, listen, I really hope it'll become or remain decentralized and democratized. I fear it won't, because Mark Zuckerberg's probably too smart for that, and he wants to control, as far as I can gauge, the whole world, be it through the internet or now through the metaverse. And he's very threatened by the metaverse, which is why he's putting so much money into it. And it's a little tragic that we've centralized cryptocurrencies already through Coinbase and Crypto.com. You buy through an intermediary. So the whole thing's become centralized already because it's just easier to do it. So the way the world works, it's more likely to become a centralized single access system, which is a shame. The user experience to be similar, but then you get the whole issues we've got today in terms of privacy and control, etc. So that's more likely than a fully decentralized, but it doesn't change the opening premise, which is that it's happening and it'll change our lives.
Okay, no, thanks. Thank you, Hal. I appreciate your time.